face in your face.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Uncommon Sense with Jose Negron. Now, for the benefit of those of you who are not familiar with the channel or watching this channel for the first time, the reason why it is called Uncommon Sense because here on this platform, we discuss everyday issues where we try to find well, discuss issues pertaining to Latinos in the United States. The link to that channel is in the description. I want to let everybody know that I'm currently live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Also, the subscriber mode has been enabled for the first 5 minutes. Meaning, if you're not a subscriber and if you wish to enter a comment in the chat, you need to have been subscribed to the channel for at least first 5 minutes in participation in the live. I want to give a huge shout out to all those who've already subscribed to the channel. Whether you've been there from the very beginning or just recently joined, I really appreciate your love and continued support. I also want to give a huge shout out to all those who follow me on social media, as well as those who allow me to enter into your devices, and those who watch from the clouds, even the haters. So what I'm going to ask you to do, if you have not done so already, I'm going to ask you to please subscribe, like, and set the bell notifications to all. So therefore, whenever I do produce content, you will have the opportunity to catch it live or catch it on the playback. And as you can see by the thumbnail, the topic for tonight, deception destroys trust. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain what is deception. Also going to explain to you how it can interfere by establishing and maintaining trust. And it goes into different levels. But before we get into the main topic, we're going to have another episode of In My Life. My apologies. Well, as we all know now, we're in March, okay? Which of course it means we acknowledge the achievement of all women. And yes, women has achieved many things. But unfortunately, there is an assumption that women can do anything. And that's not true. Women are capable of doing wonderful things. Now, sometimes they may need guidance. Sometimes they need motivation. But all throughout history, women have made great achievements. We have women who achieve success in politics. We have women who achieve success in business. We have women who achieve success in the sciences, politics. Okay. We also have women who have led governments. Okay. Angela Merkel was Chancellor of Germany. Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Golda Meir was the Prime Minister of the State of Israel. Carlos Aquino was President of the Philippines. These are all examples of women who achieved a great deal of success And not only that, our role models, particularly to women. Of course, we know that in every group there's good and bad people. Just like there are great women, it does not take away the fact that women have made great achievement, and we should applaud them and we should celebrate them. So I will be spending time talking about some of the achievements that we've made in honor of Women History Month. And of course, being March, that means the ending of the season of winter with the arrival of spring. Which means, of course, the days are going to continue to get longer, temperatures will start to warm up. We will see flowers blooming, leaves growing, all the visible signs of life. In March, to be honest, we have St. Patrick's Day, where the Irish and those who are Irish for a day will be able to have an opportunity to show their pride. Now, of course, there'll be some people that are going to take the opportunity to consume alcohol. All I'm going to say is, if you're going to drink, don't drive. And of course, a lot of stuff is going on in the world, particularly with the armed conflict that we have in Iran. To be perfectly honest, I don't know a great deal about it, but I will study it because we should be made aware of what's going on in the world. And unfortunately, we're still dealing with a partial government shutdown regarding the issues with the Department of Homeland Security, mainly ICE. The big sticking point is that the Democrats are insisting on reforms when it comes to the ICE agents, mainly an identification, which is appropriate. ICE is a perfect example why uniform personnel should be under civilian authority. Because left to their own devices, they will do whatever. And they have harassed American citizens and imprisoned American citizens for no justification. I understand that law enforcement is not an easy job. But then again, one thing we have to bear in mind, they're the professionals. We're not. So therefore, they need to conduct themselves in a professional code of conduct. And with that being said, we're going to go to the main topic. Now, before I continue, let me just state for the record But the link to join the panel has should anyone wishes to hit the link and opine regarding the topic at hand, they may do so. Let me make this perfectly clear. If I never seen you before, if I never heard from you before, I will insist that you come up in the backstage to make sure that no one flashes any adult content, which will cause the people of YouTube to take down the stream. Once I determine that you are going to abide by my rules and guidelines on the channel. Okay. Now, when it comes to trust, something that's what's very important is to maintain honesty. Okay. Because one perfect way to damage trust is to be deceptive. First of all, let's define what is deception is. Deception is the act of intentionally misleading someone by hiding or distorting the truth, causing them to believe something false, which can involve lying, omitting facts, or using clever tricks and illusions, and it can range from small fibs to sophisticated fraud. It's about making someone accept what isn't true, whether through direct falsehoods or subtle misrepresentation, and can also refer to the trick itself or the state of being deceived. Now, that's the clear definition of deception. And there's many areas where trust is extremely important. For example, when a man and woman are in a committed relationship or they're married, trust is an element that's very important. Okay. Because you cannot be physically with your partner 24/7. And before you commit to someone, whether in a marriage or a committed relationship, that trust needs to be there. Because when a couple is in a committed relationship, they are depending on each other to support each other, protect each other, care for each other, and defend each other. When that trust is damaged or compromised by deception, for trust to exist. And there are many ways where trust can be violated, can be destroyed. For example, if you are married to your spouse and you decide to have an affair, what you're doing is you're violating the vows, which is that you got to have intimate relations with your spouse, only your spouse. When you are deceptive, doubt enters the situation, and then your partner may have suspicions. And once it is discovered that you've been deceptive and you've been unfaithful, it creates doubt. And that trust has to be reestablished. And sometimes it can never be reestablished, depending. So let me just explain to you some key elements of deception. For one thing, it is an intentional act. And the other person misunderstood what you said. And then you have an opportunity to clarify. It's another thing when you lie. It's another thing when you share falsehoods. It's another thing when you don't state the truth or hide the truth. It's an intent. All those are intentional acts. Another aspect is hiding the truth. It involves concealing facts or presenting a distorted reality. So you can be deceptive by not sharing key elements of what you're saying, or taking those elements and twist the meaning to mean something else. There is a saying, honesty is the best policy. And it is. Because when you're being honest, you're being factual. You are articulating the situation for what it is. Not what you want it to be, but what it is. And when you take reality and you twist it around to fit a certain narrative, it makes trust difficult to maintain. Now, what are the methods? It can be through outright lies, omission of key details, misrepresentation, or elaborate schemes like magic tricks or scams. So let's break down each element of that part. Lies. In other words, not being truthful. Okay? Because if you take a lie and you share it as you're telling the truth, when you do tell the truth and they discover that you have lied, your credibility has been compromised to the point that even when you are truthful, no one's going to believe you. Omission of key details. When you are relaying a situation and you fail to relay the key elements of the situation, you You are creating a false narrative. And the problem is when you create a false narrative, when it's discovered and then later on you try to tell the truth, you're not going to be believed because they're going to have a hard time discerning when you're being truthful and being deceptive based on previous deception. Misrepresentation or elaborate schemes. Okay. That deals with taking truth and twisting it out of context. Taking something that meant to be A, and you change what to be. When you misrepresent a fact, we create a false image. And people will be deceived because they like to believe that misrepresentation is being factual. Now let's examine the scope. It can be either a single event or a pattern of behavior. Now the issue is whether it is a single event or multiple events. It makes trust very difficult to maintain. And your credibility is compromised. Because if you can lie once, you can continue to lie. Now, the other element is self-deception. It can refer to a person believing untrue things about themselves. People can have an unrealistic view of themselves based on what someone says. People can think that they're someone in tens when they're only 4 or 5 or even 3s. So now we're going to talk about examples in context. In advertising, often use okay, let me just read it. Advertising often uses at least some deception to make products more appealing. Okay. If you take a look at advertising, particularly certain products, people would take figures and exaggerate to try to make the product look as good as better than what it should be. Or sometimes they will use women in scantily clad clothing in order to sell a product, whether it be beer, whether it be automobiles, or other products. Legal context. In law, it can involve fraud or obtaining things dishonestly through false pretenses. Now, there are certain people that try to obtain. I'm gonna use this example to illustrate a point. You have certain people that will either lie or misrepresent their employment history on their resumes in order to secure employment, not realizing that employers can attempt to verify and see whether the information that's in your work history is accurate or not. In the world, okay, when it comes to applying for social services, many people apply honestly because they really need the help. Unfortunately, there are those who try to get it through deception. Okay? They pretend that they have no income when they have income. They will pretend that they're not married or the father of the children are not present when they are. They may try to present false credentials in order to secure employment. In essence, deception is about taking someone for a ride, making them take something that is real, that isn't, often for personal gain. Okay. Now with deception, it creates a false image and it damages trust. So now we have a clear understanding about deception, we're going to talk about how certain key ways deception destroys trust. It destroys safety and intimacy. The realization that a partner can cause deep pain makes someone emotional closeness unsafe, leading to withdrawal. Now, when a person is unfaithful to their partner, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of the rushing, what it does, it creates self-doubt, it damages or destroys the trust. And the relationship, if it can be healed, requires a great deal of healing, and that trust has to be regained, and sometimes that trust is never regained. So for those of you who are thinking about having an extramarital affair or stepping out of the relationship, think about the trust that would be damaged or destroyed. And think about how you would feel if your partner did that to you. Now, deception also causes reality distortions. Deception makes the victim question if they know their partner or even their own reality, often leading to self-doubt and lower self-esteem. So when you are being deceived, the person who is the victim start to question themselves. And unfortunately, what happens is they may develop issues of low self-esteem. Not based on what they did, but based on what the other person did. It also breeds paranoia and suspicion. Once trust is broken, victims may become hyper-vigilant, questioning every past and future action. So what happens is the person who is a victim will assume that the partner is going to continue to be deceptive. And they become overly vigilant. And we'll take a look at something simple as going out for coffee, as planning something wicked. It also damages self-perception. The betrayed person may feel foolish for believing the deceiver, shifting the blame onto themselves. Okay, that's another issue when trust is destroyed by deception. Because what happened is the guilty, the party that's been injured start to question their judgment. And they may blame themselves, which is unfortunate. Because of another person's deception, the victim tends to internalize themselves and blame themselves. It also creates long-term emotional damage. The aftermath often brings lingering anxiety, anger, and a need for professional help to recover. So what happens is, when the person has been deceived, it could leave deep psychological scars to the extent that they may need therapy in order to heal. And I would encourage you, if you have been so damaged by the deception of others that leads you to seek a mental health professional, by all means, do so. Beyond professional relationship, deception in professional setting ruins collaboration, causes team members to second-guess motives, and hinder productivity. When you are deceptive in a work environment, it makes teamwork very difficult, almost impossible. Because when you function as a team, there are certain expectations. One of the expectations that you're going to work with your co-workers in order to achieve a goal. Another expectation that every member of the team will work to the best of their ability in order to achieve agreed outcomes. So when people are deceptive, what happens is people lose trust. People lose trust. It's gonna make teamwork extremely difficult. And the person that caused that under deception, it's gonna be automatically assumed that that person can never be trusted, and that person will never be truthful. So those are the consequences of deception. Now, I'm going to define what is truth. So let me just explain what is the definition of truth. It is the quality or state of being true. Of course, there are other terminology. That which is true in accordance with fact or reality. It is also a fact or belief that is accepted as truth, which is the complete opposite of deception. Truth and deception cannot exist together because one nullifies the other. When you have been deceptive, particularly when you have been deceptive for a long period, the moment that you do tell the truth, it's going to be perceived as more deceptive, as another deception, simply because they're basing everything on your prior deeds of deception. The best thing to do when you've been deceptive, come clean, be honest, and promise that going forth, you will be transparent and you'll state the truth. Now, depending on the level of deception, it may take a long time before your credibility is restored. So obviously, the best thing for you to do is not even begin to be deceptive. But if you have been deceptive, take accountability, strive not to be deceptive any further, and if you need professional help, seek it. So I've been talking for about 40 minutes. Regarding the call in 90 minutes. I don't see any comments in the chat. People are more than welcome to watch this live in the playback. So let me just summarize. When you're not being truthful, when you're being deceptive, it makes trust extremely difficult, and in some cases impossible to achieve. So with that being said, I will wrap this up. I will be going live tomorrow night on my main, again, on this channel, which the topic will be humility, a Christian concept. I want to explain to you how the Bible defines humanity. And I will continue to state this Christianity. So I ask those who are not Christian. So, with that being said, I've been talking about, or you misrepresenting how that destroys trust. It makes it difficult to count on a person. It makes it difficult to trust a person. And if you don't trust that person, you're not going to rely on that person. And there's certain circumstances when it can be very, terrible. Particularly when you're being disrupted in a marriage or in a committed relationship. So with that being said, I'm going to call it a night. I'm going to ask you, if you have not done so, please consider subscribing to this channel. Please make sure that you set the bell notifications to all. So therefore, whenever I do produce content, you will have the opportunity to catch it live or catch the replay. So I'll say to the playback gang, we all think, more than welcome to leave comments. Let's try to keep it respectful. I will be live tomorrow night at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And of course, I'm going to close the same way that I always close. We must do everything possible to avoid the presence of the mentally and intellectually challenged. Because if we fail to do so, we'll be affected by the stupidity and mess of insanity. And of course, what I say do, we should do to the glory of God. So with that being said, I wish all the ladies happy Women's History Month. I will say have a good night to all. Stay blessed. Enjoy your week. And peace.